everybody, this is Praxis, and in this video series I'm talking about how to create your own homestead or your own retreat. We're going to be jumping into the process after you've already found land and you know where you want to build on it. If you're interested in more information on that part of the process, finding land, deciding where on the land to build, I've already made a video on that. Here's a link to it if you want to check that out. But we're going to jump in here when you've already found the land, you already know where you want to build, and you actually want to start in with the process of it. Now, the first step at this point would be to decide what you want to build on that land. And that is a wonderful part of the process. It's an interesting and exciting part of the process, but I'm going to save that for next time in the video because what I want to do is kind of jump ahead and say where you're going to be going with this, because there's a step that I think a lot of times people sort of they don't give it proper consideration to, they don't think about it enough, and it oftentimes can bite them when people ignore this part of the process, and that is the administrative sort of paperwork end of things, interacting with the town or city or municipality or wherever you happen to want to build your homestead. It's again a part of the process. It's not exciting, it can be frustrating, but it's really important if you're going to build in a place that has rules and laws and building codes and all that kind of stuff, which is most of the United States. Not all the United States, but most of the United States. And you can have a big argument about like, well, you shouldn't build anywhere where there are any rules or whatever. Yeah, okay, maybe, but a lot of us are going to end up in a place where there are those things, and it's important to consider all of that. So next time we're going to talk about house design and all that kind of stuff. Very exciting, very interesting. But today, the irritating part that maybe won't be quite as irritating if you know what's ahead of you. Now, if you're jumping in and you have your house designs, the first person to talk to is the building inspector in your town. And the building inspector in your town is going to be a great key kind of point person that can direct you to all the different agencies and departments within your town that you're going to need to interact with during the process of building. Now, I'm talking about interacting directly with the town. You can also hire a general contractor, and a general contractor can do a lot of this stuff for you, so you don't have to worry about anything that I'm going to really talk about in this video. But even that's not really true. I've been through the process with general contractors before, and the idea that hiring a general contractor always just makes it so you don't have to worry about any of this stuff, in my experience, is untrue, because oftentimes, the general contractor is never going to care as much about building your house as you care about building your house. It might be very important to them. They're getting paid to do it and everything, but it's never going to be as important to them as it is to you. And if they are working for a bunch of people, you might not at any given moment be at the absolute top of their priority list. So oftentimes when you're working with a general contractor, or again, this is my experience, I'm sure there are plenty of wonderful general contractors out there, but in my experience, oftentimes you're calling them a lot saying, I haven't heard from you, what's going on? Have you, taken care of that paperwork with the town yet? So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about, you can't totally ignore it necessarily all the time, unless you're going to just completely put yourself in the hands of some general contractor that may be a stranger, that you have no idea about them. And as people like yourself and myself are into self-sufficiency, being more prepared for things, that's probably not a feeling that you or I are going to be super comfortable with. Just like, someone else will take care of it. It's just, I'll put that responsibility on someone else's shoulder, and I'm sure everything will be fine, and I just won't even think about it. That's against my personality. It's probably to some degree against your personality if you are into being self-sufficient and self-sustainable and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk about the idea of doing a lot of this stuff yourself. So like I said, you want to interact with the building inspector in your town. They're going to be a point person that's going to direct you out to all sorts of different departments. A few of those departments might be the Board of Health, where they manage waste treatment and all that. If you're going to hook up to sewers in your towns, I've never hooked up to a sewer in the town. I'm always creating a septic system, but the Board of Health kind of does all that kind of stuff. You would submit your plans about where your septic system is going to be and all that kind of stuff with Board of Health. There's also going to be places like the Conservation Commission, if there's a Conservation Commission in your town, and they try to make it so houses aren't building in the middle of wetlands, which is bad for wetlands, but it's also bad for houses. If you build in a place that's like a seasonal flooding area, that's probably not going to be that great for your basement if you have a basement in your town, in your house or whatever. So the Conservation Commission is an important organization to get in touch with if they're functioning in your town. Also the Highway Department, for something as simple as cutting in a driveway off of a road. The highway department's responsible for, trying to make it so people's driveways aren't in dangerous places. We've all been driving down the road and you see like a sign that says like, caution, hidden driveway up ahead, and you go around a corner and then there's like a, driveway where if there had been someone coming out there, it's like, yeah, that's kind of a sketchy situation. The highway department tries to avoid people creating those sorts of sketchy situations. So whatever the situation is in your town, the building inspector is going to be, like I said, your point person that can direct you out. When you're talking to them, ask a lot of questions and see them as being your ally. I know a lot of people, will oftentimes think of the building inspector as like the enemy. It's like they gave me a big checklist and I got to do all these things. I got to jump through all these hoops. Yeah, it's irritating. You're excited to get going and everything, but they have a system that they have to conform to if they want to keep their job. You have a system that you need to conform to if you want to build your house. I'm sure we could make the system better. I'm sure we could make it more efficient and more effective and all that stuff. But the fact is, it's a system we have at the moment, and everyone is just kind of working within that. Now, you can see the building inspector, again, as your enemy, or if you see them as an ally, ask them lots of questions. They are a great asset because as you're working with different people, and even if you're going to build the house all by yourself, there's probably some contractors you may need to build it. You may need to bring in, like in certain areas, it's against the law to do your own plumbing. In other areas, it's against the law to do your own electrical or whatever. So you may have to bring in some contractors. Me personally, I don't feel qualified to pour concrete basements. I've done some concrete block basements for the sort of the tiny house shed that I built at my my last homestead. I can do that kind of thing, but I don't have a lot of confidence in my ability to do it for an entire house. And certainly, I think that pouring concrete, big forms is going to be stronger than concrete blocks and everything. So I'm hiring people to do that for my for my build here. And, they have vested interests in, getting the job done quickly, and I want the job done well. Having the building inspector, to talk to and ask questions of, if, my contractor's saying this, I don't know about that. What do you think about that? They are a great kind of neutral party that can give you clean answers to things because they don't really have any vested interest other than trying to make it so that the buildings in their town are put up well, so nobody like comes back to them and is like, why did you approve this? This is, this was this terrible thing, and you allowed it to happen. So, I mean, they really have kind of their interests are aligned with yours in terms of like getting things done well, with quality. So asking them lots of questions is very helpful. They're going to give you kind of a checklist oftentimes where it'll say, you need to get this, you need to get this, and this. And that's great because now you have kind of a directive, where to go to and what questions to ask. As you are going through the process, don't take anything for granted. If it says somewhere, like say at the end when you get your building permit, it says, there needs to be an inspection of foundations. Ask what that is about. For example, I was, getting ready for my process. I'm midway in the process right now. And, I got the form. And the last time I did a build, the foundation inspection was that the building inspector came, and once the foundation was done, before it got backfilled, with dirt all around it, before it got backfilled, the building inspector looked at it and said, yep, looks good, you got drainage around it, that's fine. In the town I'm in now, a foundation inspection is actually 3 inspections. First, they want to look at the forms for putting up the footing around the foundation, which is kind of like the foundation of the foundation. Then they want to look at the forms before the walls get poured, and then they want to finally look at it before it gets backfilled. So that was something where on the form, it looks like it's just one thing. It turns out that it's 3 things. That's why it's really good to ask a lot of questions and check in. Yeah, when you are planning on the next time that you're going to interact with the building inspector or whomever, say to them, well, it sounds like the next time that you and I are going to talk, or I'm going to need to communicate with you is when I'm at this stage in the process. Is that correct? Is there anything else that you need to check before that or anything like that? Getting that stuff in writing through email is great because then you have a record of it and everything. But it's important to just have really open communications between people because, forms get old, things get taken for granted. Don't take anything for granted. Ask lots of questions and constantly check back in. The whole idea of this is what I'm hearing from you, so that what I'm going to do is X, Y, and Z. Does that sound correct to you? Those kind of questions are so helpful for avoiding all kinds of snafu later on in the process, because it's easy to catch things if you're really open about, this is my impression of what I'm hearing from you, is that correct? So trying to do that as much as possible is really helpful. But beyond that, get to your building inspector, and begin the process with them. Where I am right now in the process is that I've already gone through all of that. And that took a long time. When I came to this town to start building my homestead, I started right away. I didn't take anything for granted that it was going to go quickly. I jumped right in, and it took 5 months between when I had all my paperwork taken care of, which took about like 2 weeks. They gave me the forms. 2 weeks later, I had the forms back to them. That kind of should have been it. But 5 months went by, and what happened in that 5 months was that I would go in and the building inspector would say, well, let's just check, make sure everything's all set here. They'd flip through and they'd say, oh, wait a second. I think that this thing here, needs to be checked with this other, board, but that board doesn't meet for a week or so. So, stop dead in the tracks right there. Wait for the board to meet, and the building inspector checked with them, and then would find out, oh no, actually that was never a problem. Come in next week, and we'll have your building permit ready for you. And of course, in the town I'm in, he's only in twice a month, so it's every 2 weeks. So every time there's a mess up, you got to wait 2 weeks to come back in and get your building permit. So I'd go back in, and then it would be a repeat of that. Oh, everything's fine except for this or that or the other thing. And it repeated, like I said, over and over and over again, to the point where it was kind of getting ridiculous. Now, I could have, blown up and been all, yelling and screaming. That's not my personality. I'm more like, well, what do we need to do to solve this? Let's solve this problem. But even if I had been like that, I don't think that it would have done any good. It probably would have just made it so that people just were irritated by me, because it's irritating to have to work through these kind of processes. But the people that work in the town, they live in these processes all the time. And yes, granted, they should know them, better. But the processes are always changing. There's new legislation, things going through, and the departments aren't always communicating with each other ideally, especially if you live in a small town where, the public employees aren't there all the time. Maybe they aren't even there on the same days and everything. We live in a world that isn't perfect, where it is messy and, well, it's messy. And that's just the nature of it. And you can get really upset about that, or you can just accept it, deal with it. Sure, you could, go to your town elections, try to vote, try to change things, maybe run for a board to try to, improve things in your own town. But in lieu of that, until all that stuff happens, you can, scream at the sky, or you can accept things the way they are and just deal the best with them as you can. So that's what happened to me. It took 5 months, but I'm finally ready. And I've been in communication with my contractor, who's going to be helping me with my site work, just kind of, putting in the driveway, digging out the foundation area, and they're coordinating with a concrete person to pour the foundation and everything. So that is just about to happen for me. That's where I am in the process. That's where I'm going to have you guys jumping in on the process. And in a couple of days, I'm going to be heading over there to help, when the contractors show up, I'm going to be helping to kind of clear trees and stuff, because I can cut trees with a chainsaw as well. Well, not as well as anyone, but, reasonably well. So I'm going to be doing that part of the process, and that's when we're going to start being out on site. So when you start this process, first, check in with your building inspector. Think of them as a part of your team, because they are impartial. They will be able to be a kind of a sounding board for any questions that you have. And ask lots of questions. Questions. Check in. Make sure that you're communicating. Communication is really important in terms of just keeping things moving as smoothly as they possibly can. And that's coming from the guy that took 5 months to get a building permit. Sometimes shit happens. So there you go. Tomorrow we're going to talk about building design, like how to create something that is going to work well during normal times, but is also going to function really well in a crisis if the grid goes down. Something that is going to really take care of you, take care of your family, and is not going to need all of those inputs from the grid to keep a healthy and comfortable environment. That's it. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. This episode has been brought to you in part by Prescott Caliber Club and Jeske Defense Strategies. Prescott Caliber Club is a federally licensed firearm manufacturer and retail store specializing in firearms, survival gear, and producing great online content. If you want to thank them for supporting this channel, go check them out at PrescottCalClub.com. Please subscribe and tune in every Friday at 4:30 New York time for a new video. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can do so both through Patreon or PayPal.